So we are back. We're going to be thinking about the next stage of our totem work. And so up until this point, we've learned how to create the structures using the internal structure. And then we've talked about textures and maybe add-ons and forms that you'd like to do, okay? So now I want to talk about in this video how we want to put a bottom and a top to our forms, all right, to create that kind of, whole piece, okay? And I waited to demonstrate this because what we don't want to do is put on that base and top when this clay is really soft, okay? Because at that stage, it really can't hold its form very well. So any weight that we put on it, it's going to really distort the form. So at this point, my clay, you can see I can actually hold it like this. It's actually holding itself up fairly well, and it doesn't morph as much, right? So it's getting to that stage where the clay is setting up a little bit, okay? So we are going to put a slab on the bottom and a slab on the top. I've also rolled out this slab just like we learned at the start with my rolling pin, and I've also let this set up for a bit, okay? This is not as important to let set up, but I think it's just a little bit more helpful. So I don't know if you can see that. It's just a little bit more stiff. It's not as floppy, but it's still soft enough where it can attach. All right, okay. I don't want to like roll this out and let it sit for 3 days. That would be too dry. But maybe at the start of class, if this is something you want to do, roll out your slab, let it sit for about half hour, 45 minutes, and then you'll be ready to attach to the top and bottom. Okay, so let's get going. I am going to use this tool. These are in the back of the classroom. They're called banding wheels. You don't have to use them, but I do find them to be helpful with a technique like this. So I'm going to put a board on the banding wheel. Okay, there we go. All right, so you can also see this totem piece. I did something a little funky with the top. I just wanted to have a little variation in form. So this will be my top piece. There won't be another piece resting on there, but then the bottom is flat. I suppose I probably could do it like that. Whatever. Okay, so let's get going. So again, I'm attaching 2 pieces of clay together. I need to score and slip. So I'm going to do the bottom first. So I'm just going to give that a nice quick score. Okay, now I need to score my slab as well, but I don't really know where. The kind of nice thing is it doesn't really matter. I'm going to overscore because, let's see, I'll kind of set it down and get an idea. I can kind of like give it a tap. I can kind of see some marks on my slab. So that gives me a general idea of where to score. But I can overscore. I don't have to be perfect with this. It's better to overscore than underscore. Okay, so grab my slip. My scoring is pretty good. All right. Now for this, because this isn't very precise, but this is, I'm going to add some slip here. Okay. Good. Line it up to my score marks here. Set it down just like the addition that I made with the wing. I want to wiggle it. Okay, so kind of just wiggle. And again, that helps the slip kind of find its way into all those little nooks and crannies. Okay. Again, I'm cautious because I have this texture here. I don't want to mess that up too much, so I'm handling my clay with care. Alright, and I might just run my finger down here to make sure it's a nice seal. And that's where this banding wheel comes in really helpful, right? It just kind of spins with me. Great. Okay, now I can cut off the excess clay. Okay, so I'm going to probably stand up for this so I can get a better angle. Use my fettling knife tool here. And again, if I just spin the wheel or the board, I don't have to really move my knife too much. Okay. This should separate. And there we go. Okay, so now that's nice and attached. You can do whatever smoothing you want to do here. You should maybe use your finger. We can soften up this edge. I could grab a wet sponge and do some softening here, but that actually feels really good to me. That's a nice connection. Okay, another thing I can do is I can look on the inside. I know it's kind of hard to see here, but I can look on the inside and see if that connection is pretty good. I can see some slip poking out there, so I know that that slip has filled every little bit of the connection. Okay, so I feel pretty good about that connection there. Okay, now if this were flat, right, I could turn this over and I could just do the same thing on the other side, but mine is a little bit funky, so I can't do that, and so I'm gonna have to do a little bit different technique here, but pretty similar. Okay, so what I want to do here for the top is I'm gonna again score. Okay. I'm gonna set this on my banding wheel. Now I want to cut this slab down just a little bit so it's an approximation. So if I just set this on here and give it a gentle tap, I should get an impression on my clay. It's faint, right? But it is an impression. And I can cut out an about shape. This is not perfect just yet, but it's just a little easier to handle if I cut out an about. Okay, this is scored. I need to score this. Again, I'll overscore. Okay, get some slip here. Fit our slab back on, make sure it meets all of our edges. And it does. Okay, now I'm just going to kind of coax it down into those valleys. Okay, and then just kind of slowly moving around, trying to get those two pieces of clay to join up. Trying to make sure there's no gaps there. We can use some different tools. I have this interesting tool here. It's kind of a mini roller. This can help you make that compression. And connection. Okay. I don't know, we can use some different tools. I have a bunch of old Starbucks gift cards. I like Starbucks. That we can use to compress also. So whatever tools you find and you think are helpful to you. That's why I love finding uses for stuff like this. It's kind of fun. Okay. I feel good about that connection. But now I have all this excess clay. So again, you might say like, oh, that looks kind of interesting and cool. I kind of like that. So you could leave it. Like, that's fine. But I could also use my knife to cut that off, okay? So let's see, what's a good way to do that? I'd have to think about that a little bit. I might have to cut from underneath here. Okay, and I just would cut a little bit at a time. I'll stop there just so you can kind of get a sense of it, right? I could smooth this in, soften this edge. Right, and I have a cool little totem piece there, okay? But again, explore, continue to explore. Maybe on my top piece I'm gonna have some little creature sitting up here or whatever else that might explain aspects of my identity, okay? Now, the last thing I wanna talk about is we have just created an enormous air bubble inside this clay, right? There's sealed air. Remember when we first started talking about wedging, one of the reasons we wedged, the main reason we wedged, is to get all the air bubbles out of the clay. All right. So if I were to put this in the kiln just as it is right now, this would explode. This would blow up, right? Because that air inside, we know that when things heat up, molecules start to move faster and they want to expand. That's what the air does, right? And it has to find a way to get out. And so it's going to find the weakest part of your clay and it's going to explode out. It's going to break your sculpture. So right now I'm going to let this sit for just a little bit. Okay, let that clay set up. Next class, right, after a day or two of sitting, is when I'm going to make the central hole here that my totem pillar is going to go through. And then we're going to put our pieces onto a central wooden dowel here, okay? So we're going to do that. That'll be kind of the next stage and the finishing stage of our pieces. But just, again, something to think about is that we don't want to trap air inside of our clay, okay? But this is good for now. This is good to be set up. I'm going to do the top and bottom of my other totem piece, and then we'll move on to our finishing stages.